The Republican Party likes to paint itself as the party of individual liberty and the party of economic responsibility. But I'm here to tell you that the GOP as a whole is no different than the Democratic Party when it comes to spending. Why do I say that? Because of the terrible HR that passed the Senate this past Friday. It was a continuing resolution to fund the government that kept spending at the same levels that former President Biden enjoyed for the last 15 months of his presidency, and would exceed the federal deficit by $2 trillion. Now, what sounds economically responsible or conservative about that? And in fact, this vote that passed the Senate of 54 to 46, the only senator that opposed it was Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. So much for the party of economic responsibility. The only Republican that opposed it in the House was also from Kentucky, Congressman Thomas Massie. I want to play for you some footage from both Senator Rand Paul and from Congressman Thomas Massie talking about this horrible continuing resolution, that there's nothing conservative about it. And it should infuriate you if you vote Republican or claim to be conservative in this country, because it's not fiscally responsible and it only adds to our national debt. But before I continue talking about this, I want to play for you the footage. Watch this. Hang with me. It's about 8 minutes total, and then we'll talk about it.
You know, the bill we're going to have to face this week will be continuing spending at the same level. These are the levels that were determined in December between Democrats and Republicans. These are the Biden spending levels. We know one result that will come from these spending levels, a $2 trillion deficit. So these spending levels exceed revenue by $2 trillion. There's no escaping that. So there's nothing conservative about these spending levels. No fiscal conservative should support this because it's going to borrow $2 trillion. That was the principle which once upon a time united all fiscal conservatives. So I will oppose it.
Hi, Congressman Massie here. I thought you'd like to know about the fake fight that's going on in the House of Representatives right now over this CR. They're trying to pitch it as a conservative CR versus liberal Democrats. And even the Democrats are going along in the House. But let me tell you why that's a fake fight. They plan to pass it with all Republicans here in the House. But after we leave town, the Democrats are going to vote for it in the Senate. That's right. They're going to need about 8 Democrat senators to vote for this thing over in the Senate. That means that this deal has already been cut, that Mike Johnson has cut a deal with the Senate Democrats, Senate leadership, and even Hakeem Jeffries, he's in on this, so that they can pitch their fake fight here in the House. Now, why am I so certain this is going to pass in the Senate when it gets over there with 8 Democrats, or however many Democrats they need? Well, Mike Johnson is sending us home a day early. We're going to vote on this thing and skip town. If you thought there was really a threat of them not passing it in the Senate, why would you leave town? The other thing that's going on is the Democrats have a retreat, an off-site retreat, where they're going to get together and party and have, guest speakers and stuff. And that starts tomorrow and runs through Thursday and Friday. Now, you think they're not going to let this thing pass? What would happen if, let's say, the Freedom Caucus decided to take the conservative stance on this CR and oppose it? Well, they would be about 30 or 40 votes short here in the House, the Republicans would. But Hakeem Jeffries wouldn't be able to pretend, along with Mike Johnson, in this fake fight, that this is a conservative versus liberal battle in the House, and he would just hand over at least 40 Democrats. And once you get to 40 Democrats, it'd probably be a whole lot more Democrats. So that's what's going on. It's all a fake fight. You're going to find this out when it goes over to the Senate and you have Democrats in the Senate voting for it. Now, here's the other thing a lot of people aren't telling you about this bill. In the FRA, stands for Fiscal Responsibility Act. I'm not saying it was that responsible, but in the FRA that passed a couple years ago under Kevin McCarthy, The deal that was cut between myself and others on the Rules Committee was that if you will guarantee a 1% cut in spending on any CR that goes past April 30th and put that into law, use the sequester language and put that into law, then we would raise the debt limit or suspend the debt limit for a period of time. I voted for this because a 1% cut seemed like a wonderful thing if they would go and do a CR for a full year, which seemed like almost a certainty at some point in the next 2 years. Well, here we are under Mike Johnson, and we've got the 1 year CR that they're going to do. It's actually a 6-month CR because we're already 6 months into this, and it's going to go past April 30th. It should trigger the sequester. But guess what? Mike Johnson's folks and lawyers have said, we're just going to ignore that. We're going to treat this continuing resolution as 12 appropriations bills or an omnibus for the purposes of this sequester because it goes all the way to September 30th. In other words, they're saying this really isn't a CR for the purposes of that deal we cut 2 years ago. We're going to call this basically an omnibus in CR clothing so we don't have to follow the law, the agreement that we did before. Now, that's pretty disingenuous if you ask me. It's even more disingenuous to try to say that, oh, 2 years ago, Massie was fiscally irresponsible because he voted to raise the debt limit. No, we got a deal there, and then Mike Johnson has broken the deal because he's not being conservative. I mean, this was obvious as that Capitol dome back there behind me and the blue sky. So what would I do? What's a CR I could vote for? Because people have said, oh, Massie voted for CRs before in the past. Well, actually, I've never voted for a CR that became law because they were too conservative. I voted for a CR under McCarthy that cut everything in discretionary spending 8%. That's an 8% cut. I mean, I'm a fan of the penny plan, but 8% is huge. I think that CR also had some border security package on it as well. But I'm not a big fan of sticking things together. The reason I voted for that CR is it had an 8% cut. It never went into law. But if you wanted me to vote for a CR, that's the kind of CR I could vote for if you're going to cut everything 8%, if you're going to be serious about it. But they're not going to be serious about it. Really, what we should be doing is what I've said all along. I've been here 12 years. We should be doing 12 separate bills. That's kind of plain as day, if you ask me. And that way there's no threat of a shutdown. The reality is that the Democrats and Republicans love to have the threat of a shutdown. They can get conservatives to vote for liberal things if there's a shutdown looming, especially when you have a president who says, oh, we don't want to shut down under my watch. By the way, this is not Trump's agenda. This is Biden's spending agenda. The CR extends Biden's spending levels until the end of the year. The Biden spending levels that he enjoyed for the last 15 months of his presidency will now be locked in until September 30th. Remember in September, you can go back and find a video, September 2024, of me in the Rules Committee saying that what's going to happen if we do a CR in September is it's going to go to December. And then because what they said then was, oh, we got to go after the election. We don't want to lose the majority. So we'll have this fight after November, after the election. Well, we got to after the election and we were in December. It was time to do the spending bills again. They said, no, we don't want to fight right now. We actually won the Senate and we won the White House. So we'll have the high ground. And they thought about doing the CR until January. And they said, no, let's give Trump and the new Congress time to get their legs underneath of them. And let's go all the way to March 14th. That'll be this Friday. They said that'll give us time to implement the Trump agenda. But here we are on March 14th. Remember, the first excuse was wait till after the election. The second excuse was wait until everybody's sworn in. And now the excuse now for doing a CR is, oh, we don't have time. We don't have time to do the right thing. We don't want the fight now. We'll do a fight in September of 2025. Well, guess what, folks? The closer you get to the next election, the less spine these people have. And if you think they have little spine now, the spine will be non-existent. I don't see the fight coming. I hope there is a fight to cut spending. I just don't see it. And we're our own worst enemy here in the Republican Party. So what should you do? Do an across-the-board cut. You should honor the 1% cut that's in law that Mike Johnson is going around. He's violating at least the spirit of the law and maybe even the letter of the law by ignoring the 1% cut. And we should also lock in the Doge cuts. Why are we going to fund all of the waste, fraud, and abuse that Doge found? Why are we going to cut, copy, paste that budget? I thought we were going to get rid of that stuff. Well, it seems like we're not. So the vote's going to happen here pretty soon. I thought I would record this video for posterity from my new office here. Finally got a view of the Capitol, and I'll be going over to vote no. Remember, today Trump is attacking Canada and me. And the difference between the two is Canada will eventually cave.
I am sorry to report to you in this case that Congressman Thomas Massie was right. 10 Democrats, the last I checked, were the ones that crossed over to vote with Republicans to pass this continuing resolution, which kept spending at the same levels that President Biden enjoyed for the last 15 months of his presidency, as I said. Now, President Trump campaigned on limited government. He campaigned to be a so-called warrior for the Constitution and the American way of life. I want to ask you, what is conservative about adding to the national debt to the tune of $2 trillion? And then the president comes out and he attacks Congressman Massie on his platform Truth Social over the past week. And he called him a grandstander and said that he needed to be primaried because he is standing in the way of the Trump agenda. Congressman Massie is not standing in the way of anything except for encroaching federal government that wants to spend more of your money irresponsibly and waste and try to strip away your liberties. I'm a big fan of what DOGE is doing, the Department of Government Efficiency. But I want to ask you, what is the point of DOGE if we cannot get Congress and the Senate to vote to make those cuts permanent? You and I both know, my friends, that government pisses away money all the time. And it is up to Congress to vote to control the purse strings. Congress controls the amount of spending. And if we can't make cuts to the federal deficit, then what's the point of raising the debt limit? Government should be spending less, not borrowing more money. That is not fiscally conservative, and it's certainly not responsible. And I see DOGE as nothing more than smoke and mirrors if you can't make the cuts permanent. What's even the point? You're just pointing out things that the American people already know in our hearts. We know that we're wasting money. If you don't know this, you haven't been paying attention to when Senator Rand Paul stands on the Senate floor and talks about all the government waste and abuse of how they spend money examining stupid things like which fish drinks what form of liquor. Yes, government spends money to study stupid things like that or to advance transgender agendas in foreign countries. What does that have to do with America and American interest? And yet, we have these 12 bills that were passed with the CR, the continuing resolution to fund the government until September, as Thomas Massie said, that were cloaked together as an omnibus, not cutting spending, but increasing it. And Mike Johnson and his lawyers grouped these together as an omnibus to get past an already passed agreement that if something passed April, that it would trigger sequester language and cut an already increasing deficit. They already agreed on cutting it by 1%. But they're not doing it. So Mike Johnson is violating already passed laws. This should anger Americans. This should anger conservatives. By increasing the debt, all we're doing is ensuring that future generations of Americans are slaves. slaves to government. Debt, my friends, is slavery. And you may not have to pay for it now, but your children will. There will come a time when all these countries that we owe money come back and say, it's time to pay up. We should be paying down our debts. We should not be in debt. And now the national debt is so astronomical that I think that very few people in both parties even want to talk about it. They just piss away more money. What point is it to pay down debt when it's some imaginary number? I can't conceive several $trillion. And yet we piss away more money as I'm talking to you about this right now. This has got to stop. We need to focus on paying down debt, not increasing government spending. And who cares about funding government services if we're just increasing the national debt? I say shut the government down. This bill shouldn't have existed to even come to a vote, much less to have only two people. Thank God for them and God bless them, even if they're willing to stand alone. Senator Rand Paul and Congressman Thomas Massie. Thank God for you for doing the right thing, for standing up against your own party, and even the President of the United States. And I have a message for the President. You campaigned on being a man for the American people, for limiting the power of government. I want to tell you that if you're serious about this, President Trump, Rand Paul and Thomas Massie are your friends. They're your allies. And you should not be going on Truth Social and talking about people that need to be primaried. Thomas Massie does not need to be primaried. That man has a record of being a warrior for the Constitution. The people that need to be primaried are every single House member and every single senator that voted for this horrible bill. It's just common sense. But as the old adage goes, I guess common sense is not as common as it used to be. If you agree with me that we need to rope in this spending, and that if you want to really make what Doge is doing permanent and hold Congress accountable, do me a favor. Share this video so that more people see it. I want to wake up the American people. And I want conservatives to realize that most Republicans are not conservative. We already know who the Democrats are. But it is better to fight the enemy you know than the enemy that claims to be your friend. These people need to be rooted out. They may be harder to root out, but I will tell you right now, we are not in this mess because of one party versus the other. It's not strictly Democrats. It's Democrats and Republicans. If the Republican Party really cared about limiting government and spending, it wouldn't have even passed the House Tuesday, much less the Senate on Friday. But yet here we are, and $2 trillion are added to the national deficit. Do me a favor. Share this video so that more people see it. Like it so that it helps out the algorithm, and subscribe to my channel for more content. Help me grow this channel so that I can help wake up the American people to what's really going on and who is really fighting for them and fighting for their liberties. We can and we must do this together for ourselves and for our posterity.